Welcome to Think Fast, where I'm joined by my dear friend Ken, who is sitting here right next to me. Ken, are you joining us as a guest on today's episode of Think Fast? Say hi to Suchita.
Oh
Suchita, say
my
hi to Ken.
God. Varun, why are you like inappropriately touching dolls early in the morning? Jesus.
This is
I
what
know
happens
the
when you record in your daughter's room.
midlife crisis is, looming in around the corner, but let's not be inappropriate with dolls and all, yeah. Come on.
Yes, that's true. This is what happens when you record in your daughter's room early in the morning for a recording. But me and dolls aside, how has your weekend been? What have you been up to?
My weekend was good, work filled. Yeah, I think I took a little break from all the information consumption. Also, there isn't very much information to consume.
Nothing.
Yeah, like which I think is a good thing because I feel like all of us can go back to reading about things that we actually give a shit about versus always
Mm,
being in this like crazy hype cycle of what
yeah.
happened in the startup ecosystem and this that and the other. But I mean, for what it's worth, companies are still raising money in bits and pieces. So, for example, I don't know if you saw this, but Tiger Global backed Ather, however they
Hmm.
call themselves, Energy,
I think
has
Ether.
raised. Yeah, so they've raised about $130 million. I'm not sure if Tiger participated in the round or not, but Hero MotoCorp, an existing backer, also sort of backed them up, and I think the National Infrastructure Investment Fund, which is a sovereign wealth fund, they participated as well. I think there were two, three other like smaller fundraisers that I saw. The bigger news and the more interesting news that I stumbled across last week, though, was Apple has hired 31-year-old Ford veteran Desi Ujkashevik to ramp up their electric car work, which is interesting because I think everyone's always been like, thinking through and betting on where is Apple going to go next with their new product launches, this, that, and the other. And I think auto's kind of been one of those hidden categories that they don't really talk about,
Yeah.
but everyone kind of knows something's happening over there. So those are the two semi interesting pieces of news that I found. What about you?
There's obviously all things Elon that's going on. He's suddenly like, "Hello, hold it. I want to figure out how many fake bots are there." Just as a random thing to like say, and he has put up a post saying, or rather, tweet saying, "This is how you can get the best normal experience for Twitter, but how to get in chronological order," which most people who use Twitter, I think, would know.
Yeah,
And even Jack Dorsey is replying saying, "Dude, I mean,
yeah,
it's not like a new thing that you are replying to." But the other side of Twitter has also been interesting. There've been a bunch of firings. Like a lot of senior people have been let
yep,
go of.
yep, yep.
The founder of Periscope, Kevon Bakerpour, if I'm pronouncing his name right, he was head of product.
Yeah,
He was let go while still in paternity leave
yeah, which was like
by
nasty.
Parag Agrawal, which is like come on, like I don't know what that is. Like it's so weird
Yeah,
and
yeah.
terrible. Yeah, and as in continuing news, the rupee is still falling versus the dollar, and there's lots
Dude,
of
I'm
this.
gonna have to like cancel my America trip, which was planned for this year. The rate this
Yeah,
rupee is falling at is like painful, man.
yeah.
Do you remember that time when the rupee to dollar conversion thingamajig was $50 or like
Yes, I remember.
48 rupees? You know what I
Good
mean?
old
Like,
times.
dude,
Now
good
it's like
old
what
days.
120,
Are
100,
you
whatever.
mad?
I stopped counting.
77.8.
Oh, sorry, that's pounds. So I was actually
That's
planning.
pounds. That's pounds.
I was talking to my sister who lives in London, and she's like, yeah, she's like, maybe this is why I'm here, and my money counts for more. I'm like, fine.
Yeah.
But
What do you think is
on to
finally
other.
going to happen with this Elon Twitter thing? Do you think he's going to go through or he's going to, keep
I
sort
have
of
a
dragging them along?
I have a weird feeling he's trying to back out of it because I think
Hmm.
sometimes he's a toilet tweeter. I think you toilet tweet some of these things and eventually you're like,
Yeah.
okay, do I really want to take this on? But you
Hmm.
never know. Nobody knows what Elon is thinking, even Elon, till like he actually goes on that potty break is what I feel most times.
That is true. Speaking of people who are changing their minds, by the way, Flipkart has delayed, sorry, not Flipkart, First Cry, sorry, has delayed
Mm,
their IPO. They were supposed to open up their, whatever subscription, I think, somewhere in the second half of May, early June, I'm forgetting. But a delivery had like a tepid response to their
yeah.
subscriptions. I think I was reading somewhere that yeah, HNIs and retail investors, didn't come through the way we've seen happen in past IPOs.
Yeah.
So First Cry seems to have backed off a little bit. Interesting things happening on the stock market as usual, and this year is going to be quite sad in any case.
Yeah. And 800 Whitehead junior employees quit because they were asked to come back to office, which is,
Oh
I mean, that's a
man,
massive number, right? 800 people.
yeah.
So also kind of, I mean, maybe that's a conversation we'll pick up at a few episodes down, because I want to see how this is happening, how this is kind of affecting people across the board, because there are a lot of people
Hmm.
going back to office, being asked to come back to office. How is that going to affect it?
Hmm.
But what are we talking this week? This week, you're getting into all things athleisure, sneakers, and celebrity brands. There's a lot
Yes,
of
queen.
interesting, uh, cool stuff that you're bringing along. Whereas I have gone to the other end saying, I'm talking census. I'm like the old person talking about census, but it's still the Patreon creator census, and some interesting data that's really come out of that. Plus, as we've been calling it for a few weeks now, startup winter is here. Lots of stuff happening because of that funding drying up, and Instagram announced that you can now put NFTs onto your account. So
Fun,
again,
fun,
Instagram makes
fun.
changes. Not a week goes by till Instagram changes again. So all of that is what's coming up on Think Fast, and lots of love coming our way on Twitter as well. Even though we might say whatever about Elon, I think these days lots of Think Fast love on Twitter.
I
Uh,
know,
for
y'all
all
are
you
so
Think Fast
sweet,
lovers.
guys. Thank you, listeners. You're so nice. And
Yes,
you like
Queen.
tag us in your Instagram stories. It's so sweet.
So cool. Okay, so but before we get into self glorification mode even further, which is only my territory, we'll go for a break and be right back with Think Fast. Welcome back to Think Fast, where it is almost time for me to go to my workout. So, what is happening with Athleisure, Suchita? Very bad way to come
What
into a story,
a
but
yeah,
you have to listen.
what a great introduction, man, Varun. What a great introduction. But ladies and gents, while we applaud Varun for his amazing skills in introducing segments, I'm going to jump right in. So as we've all seen, athleisure generally picked up tremendously. Not even during COVID, but even before COVID, where you sort of saw like shoots of embracing all things casual and sportswear. You saw that come up really with the sneaker movement. So do you remember when like Adidas's Stan Smiths really sort of came through, and then it became cool and normal to wear sneakers to work? Like, do
Yeah,
you remember those days when wearing sneakers was considered, or like even t-shirts was considered as like too casual wear for work, and now you walk into any
I've never
office?
known that time. I'm not that old. I've
Oh,
always worn
liar.
sneakers to work.
Oh,
Really, I've always
Varun
worn
is
sneakers to work.
Varun is trying to signal that he's like ahead of the curve. But you guys get the gist. Like I remember my BBC days. Everyone used to always wear like shirts and jeans and like proper formal shoes. But now, you've seen all of these sort of semi cultures emerge. And obviously in India, two of the brands that at least I've come across in the female athleisure segment. There's one called My Bliss Club, which has been funded by Elevation slash Sef, and then there's another one called Kika, which was recently acquired by Nika, with Nika also
Mm,
taking, their sort of bets in athleisure and casual wear, more seriously. In the US, of course, I think the most interesting thing has been luxury brands, which have been the, sort of like guardians of, all things formal and like pristine and cut to the T. They've also embraced athleisure, with everyone from Louis Vuitton and more sort of either creating athleisure or casual wear ish kind of lines, or having sub brands sort of jump on the same. And I think the interesting thing, though athleisure isn't new by any barometer, I think the other interesting thing that's happening now is it's almost kind of leading to this like resurrection of brands partnering with different sports and
mhm.
using sports as a vehicle to constantly reiterate their marketing around athleisure. So actually the story came from this really interesting article that I read about how brands like Fabletics, which has Kate Hudson as their ambassador, Lululemon, etc., all of them are now taking tennis wear very seriously. So even
Mm.
athleisure is almost like sub-segmenting into one part of it is obviously the casual wear piece, but the other part of it is also casual sportswear. What are your thoughts on this, man? I know you're a fan of the workout, but good to see workout gear go mainstream.
Yeah, and if you look at why tennis, right? Tennis is always considered a slightly classier.
Hmm.
I mean, if there's one sport with whose clothing will go for a workplace anywhere is tennis, because you're not going to see loud prints, you're not going to see anything which is overtly funky there. I mean, apart from a few players, that's what tennis has always been about, and I feel it also kind of it's cultural, right? Um, Me going on a random like fashion segue here, but 90s fashion is kind of coming back, and something in the
Yeah.
90s was also like tennis was a thing at that point of time as well. So I think the most interesting part about this is that it's brought this whole point that workwear can be casual, and
Hmm.
as soon as workwear can be casual and comfortable, it's just become a thing that you can suddenly wear at leisure to work, and it's scaled up there. And I think the connection to the sport, I feel, is more cultural than it is the
Yeah.
sport.
Yeah.
Today it'll be this, tomorrow it'll be something else, but nevertheless, I feel it's good for sports to leverage that really well and do it.
Yeah.
Anyone doing this in India though, as much? I'm trying to think if there's any sport connected thing in India, but it's more a
So
global
I think
offshoot.
outside of like Nike, Adidas, Reebok, like outside of like the usual regular suspects, no one's picked up sports as much. Though I hope it changes because I don't know if you saw, but India just won the Thomas Cup.
Yes,
So we are the baddie champions of the world. Clap, clap, clap.
yes.
No, but which is incredible. So I'm hoping some of these, sort of trickle down to India as well. And I think the point that you brought up is so interesting about how, all of these like slightly like for the lack of a better term retro-ish sports are making a comeback. So
Mm,
for instance, tennis is one. Golf, interestingly enough,
mm.
is like the shit now. In fact, like random anecdote, but
Most
a
boring
friend,
sport on earth to ever try to play.
it's a fun sport, man. But a
So
friend of mine
boring.
who has a membership to Delhi Golf Club or whatever
Mm,
in Delhi, he was telling me how literally golf courses in 47-degree heat are packed to the rafters. And it's not like you think it'd be like old uncles who are retired and are playing a game of 18 holes, but this is like young folks sort of like hitting the driving range and like
mm,
hitting that 18-hole game at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So golf, and the other sport that's also obviously caught a lot the limelight, and in parts thanks to even that F1 documentary, is racing.
yeah.
So these three have kind of I don't want to use the word come back because they never really went anywhere, but they've
Mm.
got that mass appeal which wasn't really there earlier, and it's interesting to see how brands are leveraging the stuff like this to actually drive impact.
I think what's going to be interesting is look at all sports and you see which sports aren't as loud,
Hmm.
and that suddenly becomes what you can have a wider spread on in athleisure,
Hmm.
because the more and more, and I go back to the prints example which I was saying earlier, right? Is the more and more loud the clothes are, which is why you don't see as much basketball, apart from, let's say, maybe
Yeah.
sneakers,
Yeah.
because end of the day the jerseys are going to be a certain way, but
Hmm.
you're seeing a lot of this people are kind of wearing almost like a badge of, okay, this is the sport I follow. But even if you don't follow, I feel most
Hmm.
people are like signaling that as well.
Yeah.
But is this? I think the interesting fact as well. I mean, I was looking through the details we have for this as well. Is that even like innerwear, right?
Yeah.
Jockey and
Jockey and
Enamor.
Amar. Yeah.
Um, Even there as well, it's become very athleisure focused. I actually was, and there are a bunch of Indian brands who are doing a lot of stuff in the fitness apparel space.
Yeah.
Like Tego is a brand which I really love, and
Hmm.
I was just trying out
What is this,
there
like a
because they're now expanded beyond their.
men's
Yeah.
workout brand?
So Tego is actually this brand which had yoga mats initially, and these yoga mats would
Hmm.
last like 2 3 years. Like I've had mine for like 4 years, and it's still pretty much the same. Now branching out into your sports t-shirts, shorts, etc. And they all making this from an Indian standpoint. So just from a sweat
Hmm.
absorption, etc. So I feel it's a matter of time before one of them kind of transitions to making clothes that you can actually wear beyond just the sport as well.
Yeah.
So and I think that's going to happen very soon. The signs are there that everyone's
Yeah.
kind of crossing that layer by layer, and
Yeah.
we'll get to that soon enough.
Yeah, and the one thing that I'll add over here is I think one thing that's left to be proven is is the market in India for athleisure still largely tier one and max to max tier two ish, right? So, for example, apparently India's athleisure market is estimated at 44,000 crores, growing at 18 to 20% annually. Which I mean, I don't know how this calculation has been made, but I find this to be a little. I don't want to say, I don't want to use the word exaggerated, but you know what I mean. You haven't seen athleisure sort of break into the so-called mainstream of tier 2 tier 3 India just yet. So
Yeah.
I mean, what makes me sort of wonder is how much of this will continue to be a 0.1% India phenomena, which
Yeah.
hopefully in some shape, size, or form trickles down to the rest. But let's see, man. India
Yeah.
winning a couple of Olympic gold medals, obviously interest around badminton, maybe a cool sports movie like Chakti India, making a comeback at some point. You never know how these pop culture ish sort of phenomena end up trickling down to folks in all sorts of cities in and around India.
I think the only thing I'd add here before we move to our next story is that when you look at the way even like urban Indians, right? I'm Tay one, Tay through or all like you'll have workout clothes, but you will not continue that same visual look when you go to work. Even if you are wearing, let's say, joggers to work, you are wearing
Hmm.
joggers that look like pants, which
Hmm.
is
Hmm.
what
Hmm.
I would normally buy, because that's simpler. It's still giving you the athleisure feeling, but it
Yeah.
looks like a regular pair of trousers. I think that's where we're going towards. But again,
Hmm.
I guess time will tell, and there's be one brand who will really break through
Yeah.
to kind of build that bridge over there. But talking about building bridges, Patreon, the global creator platform that's helping many creators, especially the mid-level creators, really monetize for a while now, came out of the census, right? And so the Patreon model basically is this: is that you can put something up on Patreon and say that, okay, you like my content, you can contribute to my Patreon by giving me a certain amount of money. Actually, on Friday, I was talking to these two creators who run a podcast called the Desi Crime Podcast.
Hmm.
They're like what 21, and they started this doing college. And they're both in the US in university. One of them actually dropped out and is starting to work for a podcast company there. And they were talking about the fact that they've actually made a lot of money just by having a Patreon account. And my
Wow.
question to them was how much money of that is coming from India, and they said this is a smaller portion, largely comes from Western markets. But they're 21 and they've been doing this podcast for 2 years now, and it's done really well. And they said the good part here is that you don't you sometimes don't know how much people will give.
Hmm.
They've had smaller amounts come. They suddenly have someone given a large amount of money as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting model which does exist in India as well. I know that Amit Verma, a few others have tried this and it has worked for them. But
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
Patreon has that data there, and it also helps creators who aren't that large scale who are going to be able to get that big ad brand revenue in.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So
So,
Patreon did this entire. Sorry, go on.
so I was going to ask you, so what are like the interesting takeaways from this, like this census?
So a few things, right? If you just look at the fact that video obviously is the biggest one, which is I think no surprise in that sense.
Hmm.
And this covers about 13,000 creators across like 113 countries.
Wow.
One of the things that came up again and again, if you run through the report, is that um, what people are trying to really figure out is how do I kind of increase the amount of revenue I make from this?
Hmm.
But yet, how do I build a team as well? Because 80% of the people are still working alone. And considering the
How
load that
interesting.
creation takes on to creators, 80% work alone, 11% are part of a team, and
Hmm.
8% work solo with non-creators, right?
Wow.
Yeah, and podcasters especially are like most likely to work in teams, whereas a lot of the visual guys most likely to work singularly, which
Hmm.
is
Hmm.
super interesting. Right, most YouTubers, and this is actually a YouTuber trend. You talk to most YouTubers, or even see videos of YouTubers talking about how they create their content. They all like to do their own edit. They like to shoot themselves.
Yeah.
Whereas podcasters, you keep hearing that they're all kind of going out there and looking for a team to kind of work with.
Hmm.
A few other pieces here, as I scan through the data on this one, is most people were in the middle. So there are a lot of creators who are in this middle rung of I've been doing this for a year, 2 years. I'm trying to
Yeah.
figure out where this is kind of going. And that creator middle class, which is now a commonly used term now in this space, is growing more and more. And they're all figuring out, okay, 1 second, you're at that point of struggle saying,
Hmm.
okay, I'm doing this. It's becoming a lot for me to do. how do I still hold on and continue this while being able to scale to that, that seasoned perspective?
Yeah.
Any initial thoughts?
I think what makes Patreon so interesting, because I remember we'd spoken about this in one of the earlier episodes where, Patreon obviously still requires creators to do their thing, right? So Patreon isn't a demand generator, but it's a tool for you to essentially, monetize your
Yeah.
platform or whatever the hell you're doing much better. So two things. One, I think, generally keeping Patreon census data aside for a second, I think one thing which is amply clear is creators are, irrespective of what scale they're at, are realizing that somewhere they need to have proprietary ways of talking to their consumers, right? Because with platforms like Instagram, with platforms, YouTube, I think is still fairly sound, but Instagram, you're kind of like a slave to their algorithms, right?
I'll go. Yeah.
Even if you, for instance, look at podcasting as a space, obviously we guys are lucky that we've got IVM sort of, working with us. But for like a, average podcaster who doesn't have the backing of a, larger sort of like conglomerate of sorts, breaking through, getting that distribution is extremely hard. So what you really need to do is you need to sort of build your audience up brick by brick, which I think, something like Patreon is indicative of, and hence obviously all of the data that the census covers reflects exactly that, right? It reflects that creators are realizing that having proprietary audiences, being able to talk to those proprietary audiences in proprietary ways is becoming incredibly important, because you can't really be a slave to algos. So I think I think generally everything that this covers makes sense given the context of Patreon. I think a
Yeah.
question that Patreon needs to sort of answer for themselves is, like, right now especially, a lot of these tooling platforms are under severe competition, because thanks to the past 2 years of people sitting at home and just consuming Instagram, YouTube like crazy, the number of tooling platforms for creators that have
Yeah.
come up are like insane, right? There's this really funny tweet that I actually read yesterday that said something
I
along the
saw
lines of,
that.
at this point in time there are more tools for creators and creators themselves. So
Yeah.
I think the one question that we all need to sort of collectively answer is, it's been like 15, 20 odd years of creation, and the number
Mm.
of channels for you to actually acquire consumers at scale are still fairly limited, man. Like, there's just Instagram, there's YouTube, Substack, I don't know where it's gone, where it's not going. There's podcasting that's come up as a new medium. Clubhouse didn't really go anywhere. Snapchat, is more peer to peer, so the concept of creators as such, isn't as widespread as it may be on other platforms. So I think if I were like Patreon, and side note, but like the question that I'd be asking myself is, what are the new demand channels that I'm creating for creators? Because until that doesn't happen, you'll kind of like continue falling back to that same, problem of some platform change their algos and suddenly, yeah, become irrelevant. So yeah, long story short, like, more platforms are needed for creators
Yeah.
instead of, the options that may exist just today.
And I think two other points from this sense which is interesting is that obviously a lot of people, most creators do give benefits to people who are part of their Patreon, right? Who kind of put in some money. The top three, which obviously are
Hmm.
huge numbers because they're like what 70%, 69%, 57%.
Hmm.
Is the top one is the ability to support me in my work. So they're not saying I'll give you anything, saying you just I want
Hmm.
you to give me some money so you can support my work.
Yeah.
Second one is exclusive content, and third is early access to content. So
Interesting.
that's what people are largely kind of putting in money for. Is that I can see
Hmm.
this, get this early. I can get exclusive stuff, but mostly just supporting someone. And why I think this is interesting is I was talking to a startup the other day who's just starting off called Claps,
Hmm.
and which is basically he's on Twitter and everywhere else, and he basically saying you send a creator or who you like a clap,
Hmm.
almost like buy me a coffee. But here he's saying you can clap to anyone. You just need to
Hmm.
clap to a tweet, you can clap to a post. I'm like, so why are you doing this? He's like, I don't want to take any commission
Hmm.
because I have learned coding because of people teaching me stuff online. This is my way of
Hmm.
giving back. So the platform's literally getting built like that. So I feel a lot of this is also happening because people have realized how much they're learning from the online space.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but and that's
Yeah,
they're
one is
finding
that,
ways
and
to help each other.
100%. And taking from the point that you said, I also think a lot of where the internet's going is because now there's so much of content. I think people now are at the liberty of also choosing where they spend their time, right? And
Yeah,
at some level, even if you look at subscription, what is subscription? It's basically you allocating money to time that you're choosing to spend on a platform, and your willingness to pay a subscription fee, or like in Patreon's case, tip a creator, or pay for early access or whatever, is at some level essentially what you're signaling is that I like your content so much, I'm actually willing to pay for it. And I think this is like a landmark, it's a landmark moment, especially
yeah,
for content on the internet, because for so long content on the internet has basically been equal to muft muft muft, right? So
exactly.
hopefully this changes the signs. But I want to switch gears to a space that I absolutely love tracking, which is
I love it
celebrity
too.
brands.
I love it too.
Oh my god, every
I
day there's
follow a
like
lot
a
of creators who make some brands and celebrities who make lots of brands too. I know I'm talking
yes.
with an accent, but I'm talking like that right now.
I don't know what accent this is from. Sounds like a mix of, in any case. So, focusing on the story, guys, focusing on the story.
Yes,
So,
just
basically,
focus, focus.
there's this really cool article that I read on the Financial Times, which featured this couple called Jens and Emma Grede. And Jens is, Swedish, and Emma is British. And they're essentially a couple who are behind all of these breakthrough brands that have come up, especially from the Kardashian clan. Guys, these guys basically quote unquote run, or like basically do all the back end work for brands like Skims, Good American, and another fairly popular denim wear and denim wearish brand called Frame.
Mm.
And essentially this article took me down this like rabbit hole of all these cool new celebrity based brands, and which ones have performed and which ones haven't, because let's be honest, just because a celebrity is endorsing a brand doesn't necessarily mean that the brand's going to go somewhere, right? Like case in point being Lady Gaga's makeup brand, which we'll get into in just a bit, which didn't really go anywhere. So I want to kick off with this, right? When you think about the Kardashians, aren't they
Mm.
the greatest innovators of all time? Like, I'm sorry, but I haven't seen a single like set of people literally reinvent themselves and drive. I mean, think about it, dude. Like the Kardashians used to do licensing deals earlier, and now they
Yeah.
have these like like Skims is valued at 3 billion, man. It's more than
Mama
Spanx.
Kardashian. Mama Kardashian is the genius of all.
um, Mama Jenna. Jenna is her
Mama
name. See,
Jenna.
a true
Mama Jenna.
Kardashian stan would know that. But give me your 2 cents, man. What do you think has happened with the success of Skims? Kylie Skin, Kylie Cosmetics, and even to some extent, Good American.
I feel what they really get is they get their audience, right? If you look at any celebrity brand that does really well, it comes from the simple fact that I am building something that is authentic to me. I am so popular, you know everything about me. This is a problem I face, but I also know you and you relate to that problem, and I'll build it on top of that. That is truly leveraging celebrity in the right way. And I
Hmm.
feel that's what they've really been able to do. Look at everything that they have launched so far as the Kardashians, everything has come beyond a core insight, which I think their audience just jumps towards. And you also get the fact that how many, I don't even know how many decades it's been since the Kardashians, the show has been going on.
20.
They are such a ingrained part of people's daily lives in every context, that you cannot help but buy what they make.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
simply that. I mean, it's like this saga that never ends because it's reality. But I think it's amazing. Like Skims is a great product, and also if you look at it smartly, they don't try to be CEO.
Hmm.
I feel the
Hmm. Yeah.
mistake oftentimes many celebrities do. They try to become CEO. They find the best people to run it,
Yeah.
and kind of scale it up from that point of time. So they're focusing on what they are, which is to build the brand, build the amplification, and they get in the
Hmm.
right kind of CEO to kind of grow it.
Yeah. And I think the other thing, like at least one big takeaway from how the Kardashians have reinvented themselves, because they've always been in the business of like, tapoing their name on products. So, like Kim Kardashian has been doing fragrances for time immemorial, right? She's also been
Mm,
doing makeup for a while. She, got into like random hair kits and this, that, and the other. And all these guys have basically been. Either putting their names on products either through endorsements or through like licensing deals or whatever else. The reason why I think their brands have also struck gold along with every single point that you've said is, somewhere working with someone else gives you access to proprietary, marketing insights, which may not be that obvious to other competitors. So, for example, if you pick up something like, Kylie Cosmetics, her genius was in Kylie Lip Kit, right? It was in that,
Hmm.
it was literally in that. I mean, nothing that she's done is revolutionary. Like lip liners have existed for time immemorial. Lip glosses and lipsticks and all have existed for time immemorial. I think the genius over there was, putting those two things together and then tying it in with that whole thing that happened of, Kylie Jenner putting lip fillers in her lips. Sorry, ladies and gents, if we're boring you, but I like track
Not
the
at all. I
Kardashians
love
down to the
everything about
T.
lip fillers.
Of course,
I will
you
get
do.
one day. I'll
Yeah, no, but so one is that, right? And I think the second thing with Skims, and it was erstwhile called Kimono, and then they got cancelled for that, and they rebranded to Skims. I think the super fascinating thing over there is, Spanx and like all things spandex were sort of like looked down upon, right? Like Spanx was that, like, secret that every woman knew but didn't really say, like every like
yeah.
especially in the celebrity odd world, right? Like wearing Spanx under your dress is totally normal, but it's kind of like, you don't talk about wearing Spanx, right? I think the
No.
cool thing about Skims is they've almost made it super cool to, be wearing shapewear, and they've
Hmm.
normalized it at some level, which I think is where the genius has like really, really, really come from, which is how do you take these Gen Z trends of, embracing your imperfections and this, that, and the other, and taking it somewhere. On the other hand, you've obviously got someone like Lady Gaga. Do you know she launched a makeup brand, or did you not know that at all?
I mean, considering that, I would make sense for her to launch makeup brand, right? Considering the amount of makeup that she will wear or not wear, depending on what she's
Yeah,
doing.
yeah, yeah. But this Lady Gaga's brand, on the other hand, was a total flop. So she basically debuted a
Oh
makeup brand
no!
called, I know, called House Labs in 2019. And the angle, quote unquote, was basically affordably priced
Can I say
products.
that audiences, consumers said na 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 na?
That's not a Lady Gaga song.
I didn't want to do that. No, 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 no. Her song is that ra 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 ra. Right, whatever.
Oh my God, Bad Romance. Are
Yes,
you
me having
referencing Bad
bad
Romance?
romance. Yes, yes.
Jesus. No, but again, like really interesting, part of Lady Gaga, because no one can doubt her celebrity and no one can doubt how like big she is. But she made so many missteps, right? Like she went, fairly, I don't want to say cheap, but she went like premium mediocre with her pricing. She
Yeah.
shockingly went exclusive on Amazon, which is like the
Mm,
absurdest thing I've heard. A beauty brand, do specially a celebrity endorsed, beauty brand. Not that Amazon isn't a driver of success for beauty brands, but like beauty brands aren't necessarily built on Amazon, right?
yeah.
And Ironically, I mean, obviously all of this money, effort, this, that, and the other went in, and House Labs was a total flop, right? And I think they're now like rejigging their brand, and they're relaunching as a clean brand, in Sephora instead of, an accessible brand on Amazon. But long story short, like I think, just because a brand is endorsed or like, front run by a celebrity,
Mm,
never really is a guarantor of success. And I think that's where like having business minds who have access to consumer information, consumer insights, and also can think through go to market, they play such a significant role in driving success, for all things celebrity brands. I'm going to stop talking, but because I can go on and on and on about this topic, but you jump in.
no, because if you think about it, right? If you look at the Kardashians versus here,
Hmm.
the team which they had running it, which is if I look at the names right, Jens and Emma Grede.
Hmm.
Uh, no,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The ones who are
yeah,
running
perfect.
Skims and
Yeah, exactly right.
Good
So
American.
versus are the right kind of executives who got how to leverage this right. Whereas the
Yeah.
Lady Gaga deal seems like one of those. Okay, when this is an opportunity to launch a brand on Amazon, deal kar lete.
Yeah.
It feels like that because it feels like a very like looking at the numbers and doing a deal versus what is right for the brand that is that celebrity.
Hmm.
It almost has that classical stamp on it saying this is how that deal was made. Okay, Amazon's giving us a great deal. We'll make a lot of
Yeah.
money out of this. We know how to do this. You just focus on giving us your celebrity brand and we'll move with that. Versus
Exactly.
here with I think with the Kardashians, even though they give someone ownership, they very clear filter on is this on brand. And like you said, cheap is not on brand for Lady Gaga.
Yeah, one is that, and last thing over here, and then I'll stop talking about this, is it's also understanding the market, right? So to date,
Mm,
90% of beauty purchases happen offline. So you
mm.
can't not have offline in your strategy. So for example, even with the Kardashians, I think the thing that makes them interesting is they'll always sort of like test the market out through a direct to consumer digital launch,
Like a
but
pop-up
then
one.
they'll back it up. Exactly, they'll back it up with a very, very strong focus on retail, which is, where I think you can be as cool as you are, but you can't sort of change distribution strategies or change where products are bought just because you're a celebrity, right? Like, you also have to continue leaning on where those purchases are made. But enough on that. I think time to take a break.
Yes, we'll take a break and be right back with a few more fun stories while I put on some makeup myself. Maybe glam this recording up. Right back with Think
Yes,
Fast.
please do it.
Hello, everybody. It's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On The Habit Coach, communication consultant Cass Thomas tells Ashton why communication always needs to start with us. Misconduct is back with season 3. Raghavi and Nisha tell us the real life story of Gangubai Kathiawadi. On Audio Gyan, Kedar asks architect Fernando Vello about the future of maps in the digital era. On Naan Curry, Sadaf and Archit break down the history of India's most important ingredient, milk. And on Marathi Kirkitun, the Deshmukhs talk about Ravi Kiran Mandal and his contribution towards Marathi poetry. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, we've been doing a series of profiles of people within the office, so do check that out for sure. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Also, don't forget to rate us on any platforms you're listening on. And you can also check us out on YouTube. We have a page on our website, ivmpodcast.com/YouTube, with a list of all our channels. We're also doing a small listener survey to better understand how you, the listener, responds to the advertising on our network. And also, we just want to know a little bit more about you. We would really appreciate it if you could spare a few minutes to fill it out. It will really help us build some better shows for you. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors on the network this week, SBI Life Insurance and Jupiter, a digital banking app.
Welcome back to Think Fast, where I'm nice and glammed up for this remaining part of this episode. But unfortunately, this is the winter part of the episode where um, all things we've been calling this for how long now? It's been a month since we've been saying winter is coming, winter is coming.
Bro,
Winter
it's been
seems to be here.
6 months. Yes,
6 months
since
we've been saying winter is
December,
coming.
Jan.
This is like from season 1 to season 3 of Game of Thrones.
Winter is finally here.
Winter's finally here, unfortunately. I mean, across the board, right? You're hearing, if you see all the statements, I don't know if you read the delivery IPO, the prospectus. Some of the wording there is literally like very pulled back, right? Normally you'd have this very like ambitious write-ups in all the IPO filings.
Hmm,
This
hmm.
is almost like like very subdued, very like working towards growing this in the right way. Everyone's kind of toned down how they're talking
Their
about things.
aggression.
Yeah, Swiggy, for instance, has got chopped off a bunch of verticals they were working
Super
on,
Daily.
and kind
Yeah,
of focusing.
Genie.
So yeah, so all signs are here that it's here, and if you speak to anybody out there in the VC space, in the startup space, they're all talking about how they're trying to conserve capital right now if they have it. But if anyone's trying to raise, it's a terrible time.
Yeah, it is. But you know what? Like, I don't mean to sound like a Debbie Downer, but I think this is much, 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 much needed.
I agree.
Because the past 6 months were just a total, sorry, but not past 6 months as in Jan to now, but like, July to December of last year were just a fucking
Insanity.
disaster. It was just, and it wasn't, I mean, guys, like, I hate to break this to all of us, but we are still very much less than developing nation. Like, I
Hmm.
don't think we realize how much income has been totally decimated thanks to COVID, especially in that, like, middle class of
Yeah.
consumers that India still doesn't have, man. We still don't have a middle class. If you look at the way middle class is or isn't calculated, like, I was every like 3 weeks, this economic census data gets circulated, and all of us are reminded that people who earn over a lakh in India are actually like the most minutia of minority.
Yep.
So And if you look at a lot of, the companies that have come up, whether it's, SaaS companies or even consumer facing companies, there aren't enough consumers in India who can afford, like, like 90% of the categories and products that are coming out. And I think somewhere, like, as an entrepreneur, what I can categorically say is, like, it just became unaffordable to even hire. Where do you hire talent from if people are being paid obnoxious amounts of money, which even like founders and, chief of staffs of all these companies know that those salaries cannot be justified based on, the company's market performance or growth performance or whatever else. So long story short, I mean, I know it's not the best sort of thing to say, but I think this, like, realization of, dude, this, where is this country going? Are people earning more? Is there enough liquidity amongst consumers to spend on so many options and so many categories that are coming up? And do salaries, like, are these salaries even warranted? It's just like,
Mm.
it was wild, dude. Like, it was just, you know what I mean? Like, it was just
Yeah.
unthinkable, the kind of things that were going on in between July to December, Jan of last year.
And you know what also happens with that, right? It's that, and I feel the biggest problem is this: is that you have people who just let's say come out of college, who are pretty fresh, who are in their
Hmm.
first job or second job, who are getting these insane numbers. When a downturn hits, they don't know what's hit them because they're used to a certain kind of
Yeah.
pay scale, certain kind of, how much you kind of get from move from one job to another, etc. And I feel, what I often think about is how is that going to affect them mentally, and how are they
Hmm.
going to really be able to deal with it. I mean, it's going to be harsh reality more than anything else, right? I think for a lot of us who went through 2008, 2009,
Yeah.
that was the harsh reality of that time, is that you suddenly got like a full correction that happened, and you suddenly realize that you have to save money, you have to be a lot smarter in terms of how you look at, where you're spending it as a business, because at the core of any business, and what we tend to forget saying growth and innovation, is that a business needs to make profits. That's
Yeah.
why you start a business, you make it so that it can make money. But we forget that, and I feel this is like that. I think the world kind of gives this correction often enough to remind us of that simple fact. But also, this is happening globally, right? If you look at it, like the look at
Yeah.
the US markets, look at the, I mean, crypto winter was another kind of winter. I saw so many crypto
Seriously,
boys
dude.
melting down online. I don't own any
Which was
crypto
fun to
still,
watch, to
so
be
I'm like,
to be fair. It was fun to watch.
yeah, but it's, I don't, my big worry here, and I want your
Hmm.
point on it, is that, is this going to be momentary, where okay, while this is down, we'll all like lie low, but sooner rather than later, you're going to have, okay, बहुत हो गया, to your conserving capital and
Hmm.
being
Hmm.
like focus on the fundamentals. Let's go on growth again. How soon before that
Yeah.
happens again?
I mean, if you look at the cycles, right? Like 2019, actually things were slowing down. So second half of 2019, early 2020, markets were
Yeah,
cooling off.
yeah.
And then obviously, COVID happened, which was like a cool down to a whole other level, right? And then, given that a lot of, Indian funds at LPs, will be sort of located all over the world, you saw this, crazy pumping of money coming into the Indian ecosystem, thanks to, the Fed being very sort of loose with their purse strings, and obviously, pumping US markets up, right? And I think what we're seeing now has actually been like years in the making. It's just, it,
Mm,
like the cool down sort of got thrown off thanks to COVID. And because of, the crazy consumer impact thanks to COVID, there was a need to, I'm assuming, like, pump things up a little bit, and resurrect, consumption, because it was tremendously and adversely affected thanks to, multiple lockdowns that happened, world over. India obviously seeing the harshest of them. I don't know, man. My, like, anticipation is that this cool down will be for at least the next 18 odd months. Like, I'd suppose, this year is going to be quiet. Maybe things pick up around, September, October.
mm,
But I think the second half of next year will also be, like, quiet and steady and slow. And I think
Mm.
it's needed because the last thing that we want is to crash and burn, right? Like the last thing that
Yeah,
you want is, explosions to happen the way they did, back in 2016. I remember we saw a pretty bad, downturn where a bunch of highly funded companies went bust.
yeah,
So my assumption would be that the next, year to 18 months are needed. But I don't know, man. I think my hope from this cool down, so to say, is that more than founders and investors, just keep them aside for a second, because they're in any case such a small number compared to the ecosystem of startups, right? Startups exist thanks to employees. I
mm,
hope employees wake up, because I think the biggest problem that I'm seeing is people are making job switches, taking 2 to 3x of their existing comp without even asking the companies that they're joining ki bhai hum ja kahan pe rahe hain, right? Like where is
correct.
this organization going? What are your unit economics? If I'm joining something that's in the, say for example, like the next story is going to be on footwear brands, right? Like what are the margin
Mm,
structures? I just hope employees take out time to actually understand how businesses work. How do
yeah,
margins work? What is net margin, gross margin? Just like educate yourself, right? Because
mm,
at the end of the day, your salaries or your bonuses or whatever else are always and should be a reflection of how well or not well the company is doing. And I think, companies that have like less than 10 crores of revenue, that have employees that are being paid like I heard this absurd example of a company that has, I'm not going to name them, has less than 20 crores of revenue. They have a communication head who they're paying a crore. What
mm.
the hell is that? Why do you need a comms person who is being paid a crore
Hire an
per
agency.
annum? Dude, it's just wild. Like what are these cost structures, and how is your revenue? Even just in any case, I can go on and on about this, but should
Yes.
we do you want to add something before we get into
No,
shoes?
the only thing I want to add here is a simple fact that just you need to just kind of learn from this and not just go back to default setting. I feel that's the big thing that I think both of us are literally saying, that is that
Yeah.
so the cycle when it repeats, you don't fall into the same trap. And yeah, so like I said, this can be an entire episode of us ranting. But on to nicer things. One thing which I
Yes.
genuinely love, and it's a good part of my life. You want to talk about sneakers?
Let's get some shoes. So, one would think that sneakers and all things shoes are like a very, America phenomena, because obviously you have, StockX and Allbirds and all these other things, on running
Yeah.
and the like, sort of, coming up in the US. But interestingly enough, you're seeing trickle downs of this, even within the Indian ecosystem of consumer brands, right? So, this story, ladies and gents, is really about like the shoe industry, so to speak, and how shoes and sneakers as markets are shaping up. So obviously in India you've got Neiman's and Flatheads that have been sort of like hero brands, so to speak, as far
Mm.
as the universe of D2C is concerned. And you've obviously got a lot of sneaker platforms, right? Whether it's veg, non-veg, or what is the other one called?
Super
All of
Kicks,
these.
Super
Super Kicks.
Kicks, Main Street Marketplace. Yeah, a bunch of them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So given that you're like the, like a shoe consumer over here, tell me a little bit about the space, man. Have you tried any of these platforms off, and where really is this consumer coming from and this consumption coming from?
So I'm gonna put the Super Kicks and veg non-veg on one side, right? Because that's obviously like the more evolved sneaker consumer who's trying to collect, who wants to wear the latest drops that are there, etc. What's interesting is like Neiman's and like let's say Flatheads. They basically took the Allbirds formula, which is basically the fact that if you look at what people wear to work, even if in many cases they are wearing formals, people are wearing sneakers to work more than ever.
Yeah,
I think that's only gotten more and more accelerated now, rather post the last 2 years. But if, if you look at all the largest sneaker brands, like even if you're buying a Nike sneakers or any of those other, either you're getting something really cheap, or you're getting something that looks like a slightly more sporty version. There was no middle ground,
yeah,
and that's where like that's what Allbirds did in the US. All your techies in Silicon Valley would wear Allbirds. It became almost a badge of like, okay, you're wearing this sustainable woolen sneaker. Neiman's is pretty much exactly that. They are literally all the Allbirds of India, where you're looking at wool based. But I know that they had to do a bit of work on their marketing, because in India, once you say wool, we're thinking, aren't my feet going to feel
my
hot?
feet are gonna smell.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, but supposedly they did a bunch of marketing around that and went. towards explaining that this kind of wool actually cools your feet and stuff like that. And so that's what they've been doing. They recently raised around,
Hmm.
looking at this number correctly, there's about 2.7 million in their Series A. They've been scaling, and um, what's been interesting is to see on the alternate a brand like Flatheads, which
Yeah.
is making sneakers out of bamboo fiber, banana fiber, and I think linen. And the whole point of their sneakers is you actually don't have to wear socks with them. I actually bought a pair of
Hmm.
Flatheads recently. Now I have worn them without socks while playing down
Wow.
with Lay on the playground, and my feet didn't sweat. I was very surprised to see that, because normally
Hmm.
you would sweat, right? You normally take out the shoes
Yeah.
and you want to like pass out
Yeah.
because of whatever comes out of it, but didn't happen. So I
Hmm.
guess it's interesting to see brands making this for our weather, because most global brands are make sneakers for colder weather,
Yeah.
whereas these are for us. So I mean, I can go deep into that, but I think that's really where it's at. We're building more sustainable, more natural fibers, so you can actually wear it to work and
Yeah.
also not feel like you are trying to be LeBron James while going to your office.
But quick question over there. Do you think the consumer pull in India is the sustainability angle, or is it just that
No,
somewhere these brands have become cool? Because I'm assuming it's definitely the latter.
I don't think sustainable sells. I think it's a
Hmm.
good thing to have for a brand.
Yeah.
I know everybody puts into their marketing as much as you'd like to believe. People buy things which are sustainable, and there is obviously a category of people who do that. People buy it for comfort, people buy it for
Yeah.
price, and people buy it for just generally how it looks.
Hmm.
And I think in many of these cases, the people buy the plain, non-funky one, which you can wear with your office, office clothes. And if it's going to be comfy to wear all day long, then you just wear it. I think that's really the criteria. I don't think sustainability sells.
Hmm, hmm, hmm. And another sort of like fairly interesting point of view, which I didn't realize, is that apparently the Indian sneaker market, the Indian sneakers market revenue,
Mm.
it was $2.6 billion in 2022,
Wow.
and it's expected to grow annually by about 11.5% as per Statista.
Mm.
I genuinely did not realize the scale of this, because you think, oh, this is the kind of shit that only Ranveer Singh and his buddies consume. You know what I mean? Like when you think of
Yeah.
the sneaker market, you end up thinking it's niche, right? Because again, the price points can be fairly intimidating. So for example, platforms like Veg Non Veg, Soul Search, Super Cakes, etc., etc., you see sneakers being sold for absurd amounts of money over there. Like I was reading this
Yeah.
article in which the highest price people have paid has been in the general range of 4 to 5 lakhs for a pair of coveted sneakers, which is
Mm.
usually, you know what I mean, like this, the second those numbers are thrown, you think, oh, like Delhi's Chhatarpur boys are the ones who are shopping over here.
Mm.
But who cares? I mean, look at the amount of revenue that is being generated. Those are pretty strong numbers for a market that, to be fair, even I wrote off as like a niche that only rich kids will be interested in.
So a while back, I was a small part of of an investment down into this company called Main Street Marketplace,
Hmm.
and the founder Vedant there actually gave me a bunch of insight into this. Right, is that how a lot of these are happening? Is you have young kids now who are
Hmm.
realizing this is a way to also kind of be cool, but yet also monetize it.
Hmm.
Because you have limited drops that happen for these sneakers. So if you are in that queue, and you will see whenever there's a limited sneaker being dropped, Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, etc., etc., you'll have like queues of people at like 5, 6 a.m. in the morning outside the sneaker store, try and get that sneaker. And once you
Hmm.
kind of get it in no time at all, you can actually like, kind of sell it back. I think it's called copying. No, copying is buying, if I remember it. So you kind of like you can sell it back and stuff. So they're actually doing that. It's very young
Hmm.
kids. Again, you need to have a certain level of disposable income. You need to be
Yeah.
able to do that. So it's still pretty like it is expensive, but you'd be surprised to know how much people spend on sneakers. I spend a decent amount myself. Have pulled back in recent years, but it's a thing. It's like what watches and investing into watches has become
Collectibles.
again.
Yeah.
It's literally that, but I think more than anything else, uh, sneakers are what we wear the most.
Hmm.
You look
Hmm.
at people across the world, sneakers are what you wear more than anything else.
Yeah.
And they're going to be the fashion ones, they're going to be the regular ones, but this is literally like it's like wearing, like, do you wear a shirt or a t-shirt? Is an option today, but everyone's still just going to wear sneakers.
Yeah, yeah. And just last thing over here, you know that things have really gone mainstream when you start seeing, like brand collabs happening, right? And this interesting
Mm,
point in the money control story was apparently Tinder did a partnership with Fila, where they, launched a capsule collection of 10 sneakers, each of which was like hand painted or hand designed by, different folks. So I think the interesting thing is, you're also seeing sort of, brands realize that this is not just, fun in games, but this is
mm.
something that has like a cult associated with it, and irrespective of the size of the cult, it is a high revenue driving cult, which is what makes this space interesting.
Yeah, and moving on to our final story of the day, because I can go on for sneakers.
Woohoo!
I've have I bought sneakers in a while? I haven't bought sneakers in a while. I know what to do today. Instagram announced that now they're going to be able to put NFTs on your profile. Adam Mosseri, my favorite person on Instagram, because he literally tells every person what you should do on Instagram. Put out not just Twitter post, but he posted on Instagram as well, where he said that they're beginning to test how you can put digital collectibles as part of your profile. He actually put one which he had just bought on his profile as well. Um, Twitter did this a while back, so you're seeing this happen more and more. And I feel this is one of the only ways, or it's almost a sign of NFTs going mainstream, that
Hmm.
you are going to showcase the art that you buy on the places where everybody's looking at you, which is
Yep.
going to be Instagram, which is going to be Twitter, and I feel there's a sign of that really happening. Um, how well this will scale is, I mean, time will tell, because I still firmly believe 80% of all NFTs will be worthless, if not more of them
Yeah.
will be worthless in the long term. But in the classic case of Instagram changing again every week, this is one more change, not necessarily a change, but an addition there. So first thoughts.
I don't know, man. I think that Instagram is choosing to do this is interesting because you haven't really seen Instagram make any bold bets. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Like they've been pretty like second or third in line to things that YouTube is doing, or Snapchat, or TikTok. Of course, they're god of sorts. But I don't know. I think at some level, like Instagram's validating like a thing which still
mm,
needs to prove, it's sort of like long term feasibility. So I think
yeah,
it was like a fun gimmicky thing for Instagram to talk about. How
yeah,
seriously they take this, and like what it actually amounts to, I think is a big sort of like question mark. And again, it goes back to, anytime we guys discuss Instagram, it's the same thing, right? Like, what are you building? Are you building so for example, if I were Instagram, I would be investing my time and money in just making it easier for creators to create content on IG,
mm,
versus, for example, and not to say that Instagram can't do both, because God knows they have giant teams, but I don't know, like I am like, it's almost like they're giving cognizance to something that itself hasn't proven its for the lack of a better word, worth, and this is NFTs. So I don't know, I'm a little conflicted about this. I think it's gimmicky, I think it's a great way to stay in the news, but will this do jack shit for Instagram? Are they going to take it seriously? Are they going to be, investing heavily in anything Web3? I don't know. I find this all slightly, like, let me just post something so I have some rubbish to talk about on Instagram. But yeah, that's my take. But what about you? You like the guys, so you're going to be kind of.
So one of the ways in which creators can kind of scale up and monetize in the long term is going to be NFTs, but I feel it's going to be NFTs. I mean, there's the art side of NFTs, which I think is
Hmm.
the collectible part, but NFTs which give you access, which be able to, if you own that NFT, can you get access? Like what the classic Gary Vee example, right? Gary Vee's NFT is a case study in saying, while it's super complex, it's giving you access to, one-on-ones, giving you access to his V conference and a bunch of others. So I think this is a way to say, okay, this is something we're adding in now as we try to build more capabilities for creators.
Hmm.
So that over time, with that, when that scales, we'll scale this as well. But I partly do agree with you as well. It's the problem is too many announcements back to back, and I watch Adam Mosseri's weekly AMAs carefully, because I'm always trying to see what is he announcing.
Hmm.
One interesting thing, because you mentioned they have large teams, he actually mentioned, I think, 3-4 weeks ago, that he said you'd be surprised to know how small the actual Instagram team is. Um, he just made that as a statement. I'm like, I found that super interesting, considering it
Yeah.
is Instagram.
Yeah.
But on the other end, what he did speak about is that his core focus is to simplify the video part,
Hmm.
and to figure ways to give creators more tools. Exactly the two things which you kind of just spoke about as well. But I feel that this is more their way to connect it to Meta's larger metaverse piece,
Yeah,
plus kind of
perhaps.
give creators something. But it's too early, and literally they only have like two blockchains which are supported, right? Ethereum and Polygon. Flow and Solana are going to come soon as well, and so it's still very work in progress, still testing right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. Only time will tell if they'll pull through. We've seen too many times that some of these things just kind of start off and never really go
Yeah.
beyond. But I think that's
Yeah.
that's across the board. I think most
Also,
platforms
it's
are
one of
getting
those
this.
things where, like, if I can buy an NFT, if I'm a creator and if I can sell and buy NFTs wherever I want, right, on any channel, why would I
Mm,
choose Instagram? Because again, like most creators, like even if you look at a Gary Vee, they have multiple
mm,
different channels for consumer engagement and consumer acquisition, right? Like, so I mean, my whole thing is like, why won't I just sell it directly to my consumers if I am large enough to have, um, you know what I mean? Like, why do I have to go through Instagram? Especially if Instagram's not my largest channel for growth, or my only channel for consumers. I have an audience on Twitter, through my podcast, through ABC XYZ. So I don't know. I think the
yeah,
question over here also will be like, what allegiance do I have to IG to, only like sell my NFT there? So let's see
yeah.
how this piece shapes up.
Yeah, but I feel what we also forget as Indian consumers is that how big a threat TikTok has been for Instagram. Actually, surpassed Instagram a while back
Yeah.
in the US, etc. So it's almost a way for Instagram to keep innovating yet find ways to do this. But I think that brings us to the end of today's stories. But we have our recommendations to go. But before we do
Yes,
that, we'll take a break.
queen.
Hi Ken, Ken's back. Ken and I will give
Oh
you our
God.
recommendations right after this small break. Welcome back to Think Fast. Me and Ken are back. Suchita, before you give your records, do you think Ken is cool? Were you
Oh
a,
my
Ken
God.
and Barbie fan growing up?
No, I was not. And can you stop fondling plastic
I
dolls,
can.
Varun? Oh my God, guys, you have to see this on our YouTube channel. Varun touching Ken inappropriately. And that's how we should begin every Monday. But
Yes.
getting two recommendations, what am I recommending today? Why don't you jump in first, Varun, while I think
Yeah.
of what to recommend?
My recommendation for this week, I actually watched this show called The Lincoln Lawyer. I don't watch as much
I saw it
streaming content,
yesterday.
but just for fun, I started watching it, and it's nice. Old school lawyer drama, like the right kind of masala, brainless in many ways. It's a good, easy watch on Netflix. You should give it a watch.
You should watch the Matthew McConaughey movie, which was
I love
actually
that movie.
like
I've seen
kick
that movie
ass.
so many times.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So what would my recommendation be? I just ordered Anna Wintour's unofficial biography called Anna. It's by this author called Amy Odell. I have been desperate to get back to reading because I like took a little break from books, earlier this year. And what better way to get back to reading than like a fun semi masala biography of only one of the greatest of all times, which is Anna Wintour. So I haven't read the book yet. It reaches me on the 27th of May. So one unofficial slash like premature recommendation that I'd make is Anna the biography by Amy Odell. So check that out, guys. And if all else fails, please watch Bling Empire season 2 for more trash television after long days of work. And with that, Ken is asking us to bugger off. He's saying, please start your
Ken is
Monday,
saying, please
guys.
wear sunscreen. It's very hot outside.
Oh man, dude. Actually, let me recommend a deodorant. Given all of us needed how hot it is, please, guys, use Juicy Chemistry's Ilang Ilang and Lavender Deo. It works wonders, especially when it's 47 degrees in Delhi's heat. And with that, Varun is continuing to touch Ken the doll in inappropriate ways. And it's time to go. It's time to go.
That's it for this episode of Think Fast, guys. Have a good one, and we'll catch you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye, Toodles.